Provost Distinguished Scholars Lecture in this semester. And we are very pleased to have the distinguished professor Elizabeth Nunez, Dr. Elizabeth Nunez from Medgar Evers College here this evening as guest, who will read from her latest work. And to introduce Professor Nunez, we have our own Professor Kelly Baker Joseph, who will say a few words of welcome about Dr.
I don't speak as loudly as he does.
We can hear you still well.
Okay. I know you can hear me right here. Michael, you can hear me? No.
Maybe you should come a little closer.
I will try my best to speak loudly because introducing Dr. Nunez so that you can have more of an idea about her. She immigrated to the United States after completing high school in Trinidad. She's a writer, scholar, and teacher. She wears many hats. She received her PhD in English from New York University, and she's now, as Dr. Henke said, CUNY Distinguished Professor of English at Medgar Evers. She's the award-winning author of 7 novels. The one she's reading from today, which is Anna Inbetween, recently published earlier this year. Prospero's Daughter in 2006, Grace in 2006, Discretion in 2003, Bruised Hibiscus, Beyond the Limbo Silence, and When Rocks Dance. She also co-edited 2 collections, at least 2, I'm not sure. There might have been more. One, The Scholarly Defining Ourselves, Black Writers in the 90s, and the other, Stories from Blue Latitudes, Caribbean Women Writers at Home and Abroad. Dr. Nunez's fiction focuses on the trauma as well as the positive possibilities of the colliding cultures of the Caribbean and the Caribbean diaspora. Tonight, she will read from her latest novel, Anna Inbetween, which the New York Times Book Review describes as a psychologically and emotionally astute family portrait with dark themes like racism, cancer, and the bittersweet longing of the immigrant. After making a life for herself in New York, the protagonist, Anna, returns to the Caribbean to visit her elderly parents. During the visit, Anna finds that she is caught between their traditional values and her own version of progress, between the girl she was and the woman she wants to be, between home and away. Copies of Dr. Nunez's books are available for sale. After the reading, she will be signing over by the table on my right, your left. Also, please remember to sign in. And now Dr. Nunez will read from Anna Inbetween. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to thank Dr. Marcia Keyes, your president, and Dr. Ivor Griffith, your provost, and all of you who had any part to do with my being here, and all of you who are present. I'm a long-time CUNY person, and so it's a pleasure to speak at the CUNY campus. When Dr. Griffith first gave me this, we agreed on it, he had suggested that I have a topic, and we talked about the topic Between the Two Worlds, the Immigrant's Price for a Better Life. But I'm being described here as reading, so I think I will do reading more than I will do this, except to say that the genesis sort of this novel, I think it came primarily out of a kind of a deep sadness and loss that I felt when I started to write this novel. And I have to say that my method of writing a novel is almost not to know where I'm going. You know, to start with an emotion or a question, and the novel directs itself. And that sadness and that loss came from what I think happens to an immigrant eventually. That when you first start, you're busy. You know, you're making your life. You're earning money. You're getting a degree. You're getting a job. You're raising children. You're doing all of these things, and everybody back home is kind of pleased with you because you're helping them too. And then you've accomplished everything. And when you've accomplished everything, or more or less, the question is, where do I fit? Where do I belong? In between that, you've been making trips home. And those are vacations, in a way. Those are, you're there, you're not going to stay. You're there, you say hi, it's a nice time, and then you go back. But now you're at this point, and where are your roots? And the thing about roots, of course, in a tree is they not only that kind of ballast, and they give you the security, and they give you a sense of where you belong, they also nurture you. And of course, my roots are in Trinidad, but I've lived in the United States more than I have lived in Trinidad. And so I write a story. I write a novel about a woman who is 40, which I wish I would. So I write a novel about a woman, Anna, who returns to Trinidad. Well, I shouldn't say Trinidad because the novel does not say where it is. Returns to a Caribbean island. And her mother has breast cancer. When she discovers her mother has breast cancer. But that's not the heart of it. The heart of it is Anna trying to fit in. Anna feeling that she has a right to the island. This is the place of her birth. She is a Caribbean girl. She does belong to the island. This is her place. But her family basically saying, but you haven't been here for a long time. I'm not sure you belong. And of course, she spent many years in America where she hasn't belonged. I mean, she's belonged when it's convenient, but I think every immigrant knows that when it's not convenient, you don't belong. If you are there to swell up a number, you belong, but when the chips are down, you don't belong. So I'm going to read a little bit from what Anna's situation is. And let's go there. Her mother is getting treatments, chemo treatments, because her tumor is so huge, it has to be reduced before she has surgery. And this is one of the times her mother has come back from her chemo treatment. And they are about to have breakfast. Her mother, her father, and Anna. In the morning, Anna's mother is her old self again. Her skin glows, her eyes are bright. She has come to breakfast in her favorite chocolate brown linen pants, which she has paired with a cream-colored linen tunic, one with a mandarin neck that she has fastened at her throat. The sleeves on the tunic cover her arms. Nothing is exposed that will give the lie to the picture she presents of perfect health. There are no hints that under the front of the tunic a tumor grows. Lydia, their helper, is beaming when she greets her. I make fried bacon bulgoil, Lydia says. Fried bacon bulgoil? This is her mother's favorite food. Her lips relax. Thank you, Lydia, she says. Lydia grins. It's a little thing. John Sinclair, her husband, is standing behind his wife. He does not approve. Wouldn't bulgoil and bakes be too heavy for your stomach, Beatrice? Her mother takes the seat he pulls out for her. Dr. Ramdulal said that if I feel well, I should eat what I want, and I feel well. She opens her napkin. Lydia brings the warm bakes in a basket and presents the bulgoil on a silver-plated tray. The marinated saltfish is mixed with an appetizing medley of colors. Translucent pieces of raw onion, chopped red tomatoes, yellow and red sweet peppers, and sprinkles of fresh green chives and parsley. Anna's stomach has grown unaccustomed to this rich fare at breakfast. In New York, she has bagels and cream cheese. Sometimes cereal and bananas for breakfast, nothing more complex. For the last 2 days, she has managed to pick her way through sardines and herring. But the saltfish is too much. She will not be able to keep it down. Raw onions irritate her stomach. She reaches for the bakes. She'll have one with butter and cheese, but not the bulgoil. Pass the bulljoy to Anna, John, her mother says. I'm sure Anna's not had bulljoy in New York. Anna crosses her hands. Not for me, she says quickly. Not for you? Her mother narrows her eyes. Too rich, Anna says. Too rich? So early in the morning, Anna says. Lydia went through a lot of trouble, her mother says. She takes the platter from her husband's hands. Lydia made bulljoy for you, Mummy. Her mother wants to trap her with guilt, but she will not let her. And because she thought you would appreciate it too, her mother passes the platter back to her. I do. Anna looks over to the kitchen and catches Lydia's eyes. I do, Lydia. Lydia smiles. The least you can do is eat it, her mother says. I can't, really I can't, Anna says. Her mother puts down the platter. But the bakes, I love the bakes, Anna says, slicing one of them in two. Her mother spoons some bulljoy on her plate and turns to her husband. Did you notice, John, how she picks at everything? She doesn't like our food. Did you hear her last Sunday? She doesn't like callaloo. It's practically our national dish and she won't eat callaloo. I just prefer cheese in the morning, that's all, Anna says. She means cream cheese, John. I can have the cheddar. Her mother ignores her. Do you know what cream cheese is, John? It's not real cheese. Not in my opinion. Her father concentrates on the bulljoy on his plate. He piles a sliver of saltfish with bits of tomato and onion delicately on the back of his fork. She's become American, John, her mother presses on. She eats only American food. Her father chews slowly. He does not say a word. I suppose saltfish is beneath her now she lives in New York. Anna has had enough. Don't speak about me in the third person, Mommy. I'm here. Speak to me. Her mother faces her. Then how is it bulljoy is too rich for you? You used to eat it when you lived here. You loved it. Raw onions make me sick, Anna says. That's it? Raw onions make you sick? I can't eat it so early in the morning. You used to. John, didn't she used to? Her mother challenges her father to take her side. He puts down his knife and fork. Yes, Beatrice, he says indulgently, she used to. But if she doesn't want to eat it now, you shouldn't force her. Her mother stretches her hand across the table and places the dish of bulljoy away from Anna. I suppose Americans don't eat raw onions for breakfast, she mutters under her breath. I suppose that's it. A numbing pain shoots through the base of Anna's head, the muscles tightening into a ball. She cradles her neck in the palm of her hand. Her father glances at her sympathetically. Beatrice, Beatrice, he pleads, let it go. Her mother retreats. They finish their meal making small talk about the weather and the recent rash of robberies in the neighborhood. So that's breakfast. Later on, they go for, later at night, she's watching her parents. I'm skipping a bit. She's watching her parents sitting in the veranda. And she's looking at the way her parents relate to each other. And she's almost an outsider here. So I'll read a little of that. Later that night, after dinner, her parents sit in the veranda. John Sinclair has put on Bach on the CD, the Brandenburg Concertos. Anna washes the dishes. Her parents have not invited her to join them in the veranda. So when she has finished, she goes to the living room to work on a manuscript. Through the glass sliding doors, she has a clear view of her parents. They do not appear to be saying much to each other. Her mother's head rests on the back of her chair. Her hands are folded on her lap. Her legs are spread apart, though only slightly. She seems at ease, perfectly relaxed. When Anna looks up next, her father is standing over his fish pond, rubbing his chin. He says something to her mother, who nods. He looks down on the pond. Her mother says something to him. He turns away from the pond, bends down, and plucks out the weeds that have pushed through the cracks on the pebbled concrete border. Her mother has asked him to do this, Anna thinks. When her father is done, he returns to the chair next to her mother. The fifth concerto comes to an end. Her father rises again and goes to the kitchen. He passes the entrance to the living room, but he does not look inside. If he knows his daughter is in there, he has decided not to disturb her. But perhaps he does not know she is in the living room. Perhaps his mind is elsewhere, with his wife, who is waiting for him in the veranda. It is almost 10 o'clock when Anna finally gathers up the pile of manuscript pages on the cocktail table next to her chair and turns off the light in the living room. Her father, who has still given no sign he knows she is in the living room, suddenly calls out, "Leave on the light, Anna. Your mother and I will stay out here a while." Common roots. They do not have to speak, sitting next to each other. A sigh, a frown, a clearing of the throat, a smile, the softening of the eye, legs crossed and uncrossed, body language. That is all they need. Late into the night it rains, a hard rain that pounds the roof of the house. It beats a rhythmic drum loud and insistent. Anna bolts upright from a deep sleep. For a moment she does not know where she is. Gunfire? It is her first thought. She lives in Brooklyn, Fort Greene, not far from the park. Sometimes there are muggings, sometimes gunfire. But it is not gunfire she hears. The drumbeat is furious, behind it a waterfall, the deafening sound of rain sluicing down in gallons from the clouds. Her bedroom, the whole house seems overpowered by this force of nature suddenly unleashed. Be not afeard. This isle is full of noises, sounds and sweet ears that give delight and hurt not. When she was a child, she was not afraid. She is afraid now. She presses her face against the window pane. Then she remembers a childhood rhyme. And then I'll take you to a continuing scene the next day. I think I'll do some leaning here. But I'm so short, you may not see.
We can hear you.
Anna's mother continues to improve. No nausea, no headaches, no weakness in her limbs. Her mother is in such a good mood that 2 days after chemo sent her to bed for 12 hours straight, she announces she is ready to spend the day in the country. "Come with us," her father suggests. "Yes, Anna, you'd like it. It's beautiful on the North Coast," her mother says. Perhaps all her mother is doing is stating a fact. It is beautiful on the north coast of the island, but her words get under Anna's skin. She is not a foreigner, a tourist. "I've seen the North Coast," Anna says irritably. "So you won't come with us?" "Beatrice," her father turns to his wife in dismay. "Tell her to come. She'll have a great time." It's just that you have been in America so long," her mother says, trying to reason with her. "I've lived here for 18 years, Mommy," Anna says. "More there than here," her mother says. "It's still my country." Anna, you've become so sensitive. Of course this is still your country. Nobody's saying otherwise. Your father and I just wanted to show it to you, that's all." "Show it to me?" "You know," her mother shrugs, "just in case." "Just in case what?" "It's been a long time since you were there." Why is she so thin-skinned, so sensitive, as her mother says? She wants to go. For all her protest about the indelible stamp of her early years on the island, for all the resentment she feels when her mother intimates she has become American, she's forced to admit to herself that there is much she has forgotten, much she can no longer claim as hers. She does not want to lose her moorings. She does not want to be set adrift on some Sargasso sea, like the emigrants who left the island before her, the ones lured by England's siren song, only to discover that once they cleared the rubble left in the wake of the war, once they had rebuilt the mother country, England had no longer need for them. She wants to see more of the island. She needs to remember to hold on to home, to sunlit backyards perfumed with the scent of ripe mangoes, to salt-filled rain, to skies washed clear blue, to flamingos turning green trees in the mangrove to red, to fishermen pulling in seines in the silvery dawn. She needs to fix in her head waves breaking on the rocks below the narrow, winding road to the north coast. Her mother tries again. I've asked Lydia to pack lunch. Come with us, Anna, please. Remorseful, ashamed now of her childish reaction, Anna agrees to go. Her mother is right. She has forgotten how beautiful the North Coast is. The sun is a dry season sun that illuminates everything. Fluffy white clouds that drift lackadaisically across the pristine blue sky. Brown earth that sparkles when sunbeams gild metallic stones. They pass through small villages at the foot of the mountain, tiny houses clustered at the edge of the road, once a dirt track for horses pulling carts and donkeys loaded with produce for the market. They see a donkey now, burlap bags bursting at the seams, grazing its flanks. The man sitting astride it waves his machete. All the villagers wave, laughter and talk suspended when the Sinclairs pass in their fancy car. On the seaside of the road, the land plunges down deep precipices. Below, the water is rough, waves crash against giant black rocks, miniature islands broken off from the land, and pitch glittering white sprays of seawater up to the sky. Anna drinks in the air that rushes through the car window. Salt carried on the wind stings her nose. This is what she needs to remember, what she needs to lock in her heart for wintry days in New York. We're almost there. Her father brings the car to a crawl. He can barely suppress his excitement. Yes, I can tell we are near now. Her mother strains her head through the window. The muscles on her neck rise and stiffen. Do they have a specific destination? Until now, Anna had not thought so. Where are we going? She asks. You'll see, her mother says. The road bends and the sea disappears. They are entering the mountain now. On both sides, the forest grows thicker. Tall trees have spread their branches wide at the tops, and their leaves form a canopy shading the sun. But beneath them, new trees have multiplied and bushes grow wild. In a couple of weeks, you'll need a machete if you have to stop to pee, her mother says. Anna braces herself for her mother's response to this crude remark, but her mother giggles, like a schoolgirl, Anna thinks. They drive a few yards further. Stop, stop. Her mother grasps her father's arm. I think this is the spot. I think it is here, John. I'll have to cross the road, her father says. Yes, park there, on this side, under the tree. Be careful now. Her mother directs him across the road. Yes, this is it, I'm positive. Her father breaks. He squints, studying the bushes. You're right, he said at last. This is it. Your mother has good eyes, Anna. Anna sees trees. Big ones, smaller ones. Bushes, tall grass. No special marker. No difference in the landscape from the cluster of trees they have just passed. Your mother and I used to catch birds here, her father is beaming. Mommy? Remember Beatrice? But her mother is already out of the car. It's still here, I can see it. Come, John, she quickens her pace. Her father hurries towards her. Anna tries to follow them, but the leaves of her blouse get caught in a knot of twigs. She stops to untangle herself, and nettles cling to her pants. She bends to pluck them out. She clears one leg, only to find the other leg of her pants crimped with more nettles. She reaches for a limb of the tree to steady herself, and her fingers grasp the sharp ends of a branch. Everywhere she turns, she is stuck, pricked, prodded. She stumbles over dry branches and loosened stones. They are far ahead of her. She cannot see them. She hears only their voices. Imagine that, her father says. Come, her mother urges him on. We are almost there. The rain that fell has thickened the underbrush. Above, the sky strains through tiny spaces between leaves at the tops of giant trees. But below, the green is dark, threatening, it seems to Anna. The forest is closing in on her. She can barely see more than 2 feet in front of her. Her heart is hammering. Her parents have stopped speaking. There are no human voices to guide her. All around, the leaves on the trees switch ominously. Fruit falling on the ground makes sounds like the explosion of bullets. Birds fluttering their wings terrify her. A black, yellow-beaked crow caws. She stifles the urge to scream, "Be not afeard." This is her island, her rainforest, but she cannot quiet her heart. It hammers still, beating loudly in her throat. Then suddenly, in a parting of the trees, she sees them. They are standing a hair's breadth from each other, so close that when a breeze ruffles her mother's blouse, the edges brush against her father's shirt. They're looking intently at something. What? Anna cannot distinguish it from the browns and greens in the forest. She draws closer. Shapes become more distinct. Branches, leaves, vines, winding into a shed, or what was once a shed. "We should have come back here before now," her father is saying. "Yes," her mother replies, regret weighing down her word. Anna clears her throat. The noise she makes is slight, but it startles them. "Anna," her mother spins around. They stare at her, eyes stretched open wide as if they had forgotten she had come with them. "Did I surprise you?" "Of course not." The mother quickly recovers her composure. "Your father and I were reminiscing." And that scene continues as they are in the forest, as they go in. And Anna begins to be, all through this, she's really puzzled about this mother and this father. She cannot understand that at one point her mother seems to her to be very stodgy. These are very upper middle class Caribbean people, and they are well educated. They listen to classical music. The father goes hunting and so on, and she cannot understand this stodgy mother, and yet her mother has a gardener and a maid, and the mother speaks roughly to them, but at the same time there's a relationship between the mother and the people who work for her. And Anna cannot put these two pieces together. And then as you see, she can't put together this mother like that and somebody who says, "Stop here to pee," and is a bird catching. And it's all of this that Anna has lost. I can say that what happens in a novel, if you're lucky, is that in this process of discovery, you come to the end and what is it you have discovered? And so I'm going to share with you a little bit what I discovered, and it is that you have to look at a culture and a people through their lenses, not yours. And having lived in the United States much longer than I have lived in the Caribbean, even though I came here when I was 19, so I was a full-grown person. But I've lived here, I got married here, divorced here, had a child here, all those kinds of things. And even though I go back to the Caribbean, I'm just going back to, stay. But in this, through this girl, through Anna is actually judging everybody who lives there and the relationships with them and everything else through American eyes. Those are the lenses that she's using. And she has to learn, and what I discovered for myself, that one has to learn to look at cultures and look at people through their eyes. So it was a kind of process for me, watching this woman go through this. And the only thing that is true to her is the landscape. Because, and this I have to say I stole from George Lamming, the great Caribbean writer, who in a novel of his that I read many, many years ago called Natives of My Person, he talks about how the landscape works in sync with the people, and if you are an antagonist towards the place where you're in, the landscape will work against you. And it's really true. It's really true. So, the parents walk through the forest and she can't do it. She can't do it. Of course, if she were in the right mind and the right lenses, she would have been able to. So I'm ready for your questions.
Who did you just mention? The name? George?
George Lamming, the Barbadian novelist.
Do you
Yeah.
sometimes feel that he chose Anna because, in a way, she's like a good translator? because you write mostly for an American audience, so in a way it's like convenient to have Anna who sees it through a foreign lens, and at the same time it's more palatable for American audience. You see it that way, or?
I have to tell you, my publisher and my agent would love for me to to think about audience when I write. Because one of the things that happens to you as a writer is you discover that after you've done this work and worked so hard, there's an industry that takes over your book as though it were a commodity. It's a commodity, and all they want to do is to take this commodity and make money with it. That's the only reason they exist. It's quite a shock for that to happen to you. You think the publishing industry is all interested in fine literature and developing great artists. It's not. They exist to make money. So therefore, they want the writer to think about audience. They want the writer to think about this work is being prepared for this reader. And when you don't have that, their salespeople don't know what to do, because their salespeople all meet and they say, well, what's the audience's book? I don't think that way. And thank God I have a job, which pays my rent and feeds me. And I write. I write because I want my work to last. I don't want it to be a quick flash. And I'm sorry, that's the way it goes. So I can't say that I'm thinking about the American audience, and probably the closest I could say is I'm thinking about me. That's the closest I could get there. There's a writer I admire tremendously, Maryse Condé. She's a Guadeloupean writer. And I sometimes do readings with her. And many years ago, I did a conversation with her. You know, she was the writer, and I was just talking to her to create a scene. And somebody in the audience asked her, who does she write for? And she said, I write for myself. She says, that's all. I write for myself. And I was just shocked. You know, maybe that was true for me, but I would never say it. You know, I couldn't see myself saying, I write for myself. And she said, but it's true. I mean, I think that writers that I admire, work that I admire, have come with that kind of authenticity. I mean, I once heard the great Norman Mailer say almost that, say just those same words. He said, I write because there's a question I have. There's something I'm concerned about, and I write to find out the answer. Now, if you write well, because you're a human being writing about human characters, it should have that pull to anybody, everybody, universally. Yeah. Yes?
Yeah. I'm sort of interested where stories come from. You know, in a similar public situation like this, I once asked William Styron where this first novel, Lie Down in Darkness, came from. And he said, I don't know why, but I had an image of a man walking behind a coffin, and I had to figure out how he got there.
Yeah.
And so the whole novel was a kind of process of finding out what that guy was doing in that grave, in that cemetery walking behind a coffin.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there are those formulaic novels. You can almost, I can't read them, but I know a lot of people read them. But they have a formula, you know, and it's all plotted out. But as I say, the writers I admire come from that kind of, it's this very scary thing. I am in the process now of writing another novel. And I can tell you, I know why writers drink or take drugs. Because you don't know, it's ephemeral, you know? You're writing, and the writing takes you somewhere else. But the point is, you don't know beforehand that the writing is taking you there. So you don't, we like control. You want control. You don't have control. And it goes there. And because you're hopefully creating authentic characters. And it's kind of scary. So there is a part in which you know what you're doing, but a lot of it is you don't know what you're doing. And the writing takes you where you're going to go. And so you can start with anything. For me, which I hope you heard when I was reading, is that the writing has to have a certain kind of cadence, a certain kind of music. The words have to go in a certain way. So for me, that first sentence sets everything for me. And it's kind of scary to have a first sentence set everything for you, because it's setting for you what person you're going to use, what tense you're going to use, what point of view you're going to use, what voice you're going to use. And you either have to scrap the novel and start all over again, or keep on going. I like Virginia Woolf, and To the Lighthouse, the painter, what's her name again? Just because I want it, I can't remember her name. Lily Briscoe is the painter. And at the end of was To the Lighthouse, Lily Briscoe says that. But she's talking about painting. She puts a brush stroke, and it's she's committed to a certain way. So, you could start with an image you have in the mind, or for me, I would not write that sentence. I walk and walk and walk. Like the novel I'm working on now, I've been thinking about it for a while, and then I got the first sentence. I'm hoping it's going to work, because it's taking me along. But it's usually something that somehow in your unconscious you're working with. Yes.
Hi, welcome to your college.
Thank you.
I love what you wrote. Some of it sounds like poetry to me. Mm-hmm. It brought me a lot of memories, because I was born in the Dominican Republic. Mm-hmm. So when I go back, I also have the fight of the two cultures.
Yeah.
I have to be very diplomatic, because I don't want them to think, because I'm learning from them. Sometimes I say, maybe I should be more like a Dominican woman dedicated. Right. I mean, we have women that are everywhere, but the main is being home and taking care of your family. So, for example, I went with my mom in 2004, and let me make it brief. One part of the family, my mother said, you cannot sleep with your boyfriend in the same room. And in another one, it was okay, because I was by myself. But you see, those are the struggles, and sometimes I put in a little bit of what I know about domestic violence and child labor. I know that there is little I can do about child labor, but I also, about domestic violence, I sort of give a hint, like, you can do something. It's hard, you can do something. Well, very quietly, because I know it's very... Yeah.
Well, one of the things is you carry the weight of America on your back. Yes. That is for sure. Yes. And the weight of America that you carry on your back is the idea that America sees itself as the most powerful nation in the world, and that it directs everything in the world. So when you come there, you can't criticize, because the minute you criticize, the minute you say something, you object to something. Like, for example, I am fit to be tied with the way the costumes have become at Carnival, and what women do, the way women dress now in Carnival costumes. And obviously it is there, it is now a spectator sport. Long ago, Carnival, everybody jumped up. Now the men stand up on the sides of the road, and the women in the skimpiest outfits, doing the most erotic dances, dance on the street. Now, anybody with their heads on could see what's going on. And obviously, I think they know what's happening. I think they know that the women are being demeaned there. And the women may think this is all about freedom, but come on. Now, if I say the slightest thing, which I did one day to my family members, the roof fell in. The roof fell in. And it was not just that I hadn't lived there, but that I was bringing all this thing about America could tell people what to do. Who are you telling us what to do? So you have to learn to shut your mouth and to say that the streets are beautiful, that this is beautiful, everybody's beautiful, it's beautiful. And I write and tell them what I think. Yes.
I think there's something very distinct about the modern Caribbean immigrant experience. My discipline approach it in a different way. And the whole state of being in between,
Yes.
which I think is a theme in a lot of the Caribbean literature, and a concern I also hear in conversations with my students, you know, who will still refer to my country and going home. And I think a lot of it may be rooted in the level of technology we have today that enables this connection, that you can live here and you can live here for years, but you still have relatively easy access to your homeland through airplanes, through internet, through cell phones. So this in-between state is kind of fostered, and there's, you know, a connecting link that's very, very difficult to break. And also with the fact that the islands are in relatively close proximity to the east coast of the United States, and maybe also, you know, of course, Florida and the South. So I think this impacts on the Caribbean immigrant experience in a way that, if you want to look at, you know, I mean, America is all consists of all various immigrant groups, but the experience of the 19th and early 20th centuries is very, very different. You don't have that sense of connectedness that creates that tension that you described so eloquently.
If I had read what I had prepared, I would have been talking about that. They call themselves transnationals. That yes, technology has seemed to, and the word is seemed to bring us closer. We, you know, I communicate with my sisters and brothers 3 and 4 times a day. They now, you now can call. I mean, just through email, you can call for almost pennies, you know. I'm actually flying to Trinidad tonight. I'll be there in the morning. It's you know, I actually started my talk about the time I have a photograph on my piano at home of my older sister leaving to go to England. And we are dressed to the hilt. My father is in the suit, my mother is in a great outfit, I'm in a great outfit, the little ones are all, we had gone to a photographer before my sister took that ship to England, because we weren't going to see her again. It would have been years before we saw her. When we saw her again, she had 3 children. She was married and she had 3 children. It was three weeks on that ship to England. Now it's nobody, you know, you're going. But I keep saying it seems, because the people who stay home, people who stay in Trinidad, see themselves as the authentic people. And you have had some privileges in America. And you may not say it, but everybody is aware of the privileges you have. And then you have an American passport, which is no little thing. If you got in trouble in that island, the American embassy will come and help you, take you out, because you're an American citizen. And you know that, wherever you go. I just got goosebumps thinking about that, because I remember Manthia Diawara, who is at NYU, saying something similar to me, that when that in Paris, they like to, come in and round up the immigrants and put them in jail. And when they see he has an American passport, he's from Mali, he says everything changes. Nobody touches him. Nobody touches him. In fact, they know now that he has an American passport. And he can save whomever is around him. You know, they will not invade that. He has a great book called We Won't Budge. So, you know, there are unspoken words with all this, with all that the technology does, and it does do a lot. There are just subterranean vibrations that are still there. And there are some things that you have a right to say and you don't have a right to say. Come back and live here. You know, I have brothers who are physicians. Go back in Trinidad and do your doctor in there. Why are you doing it in the States? I know why, because you're going to get more money over there. They make pilau, they have calypso music, they do everything, but they have something more. So it's more. And the other thing I want to say, about the Caribbean, which may create a puzzle when people read my novel, is that it is multiracial and that it is very much a class system. The class system is alive and well in the Caribbean. And many people are not aware of that. Let me tell you, when I meet a Trinidadian, they know exactly where I live, what school I went to. Within 10 minutes, I meet a Trinidadian, I can tell you what school they went to, what part of the island they live, and most likely what their parents do, and the life they have. We know that about each other.
My mother said they situate you right away.
Yeah, we know that about each other. And what happens in America is they don't know. They don't know us. I'm talking about you. You don't know us. You think you know us, but you don't know us. I mean, I can meet your provost and his wife, and I can tell you all kinds of stuff about them.
Don't tell him, don't tell him.
No, I won't tell him. But I can tell you a whole set of stuff that you won't know unless he tells you. Unless he sits and he knows about me. I walk into his house and I know about him. And we are just seen here as Caribbean people, but it's much more complex. We have a really complicated, we are really a complex, complicated society. And the person who I think who did that best is the Guyanese writer Wilson Harris. His books are hard to read, but he has that idea about this volcano that we are, layers of volcano that are there. So really complex, and nobody's talking. That's the other thing. Caribbean people are not talking. They're laughing and they're joking and they're everything else. They're laughing, joking, but it's there. So it's, yeah.
There's something akin to that among African Americans.
Absolutely.
The South is the homeland.
Absolutely.
And between the two world wars, there was the migration, so you had all the people who moved to the north. But now there's the reverse migration. And if African Americans who spent a lot of their time in the north, if they go to Atlanta or Charlotte, then it's going to be very more cosmopolitan. But if they go into the more rural areas where their cousins and their uncles and they have families still there, they have to do the same thing. Don't go there thinking that you're going to head to church and you best keep your mouth
shut.
It's the same. It's the same thing.
Yeah, there's a connection too about this, the Americans in the South and the people in the Caribbean. There's a lot of that similar kind of underground thing that is undercurrent that's there. Yeah. Don't we give you a surface and you never figure it out. You never figure it out.
Right.
It's and sometimes I get lost, to tell you the truth. When I go back home, which I still call home, it takes me a week or two to figure out what's going on. Because everything looks in a certain way. And then I get back my head back, and I get back my accent, and because they think I speak like an American. Yes.
With Puerto Rican culture, it's the same dynamics. When Puerto Ricans would move here, and the idea was to make it here and then have enough money to go back. Mm-hmm. But there the situation is both are citizens. Is it magnified? Was Anna a citizen of the United States? Did she give up her Trinidadian citizenship? And did that?
I didn't speak about that in this novel, but I would assume that Anna is an American citizen. But I can speak for myself that I was here for many, many years and would not become a U.S. citizen. I think I was like a lot of immigrants who felt that one day I'm going to go back home. That's where I'm going to be. I'm not going to stay here. And the idea of becoming a U.S. citizen, which would require me to give up my citizenship, was something I couldn't do. And actually, the only reason I did it is we got a new government in the country, and the new government said you didn't have to give up. The Trinidadian government said you didn't have to give up your Trinidad citizenship. And so I became a U.S. citizen. That was it. Now, it's not something I can explain. It's not something I can tell you. I mean, why did I do that? I like voting. The minute I became a citizen, I voted all over the place.
You voted more than once, Elizabeth?
Don't catch up. Don't catch up voting. You know, school board, I'm voting all over the place. But the idea that I had to give up my citizenship was something I couldn't do. And I unfortunately didn't have to do. I'm just going to take a question here and then come back to you again.
Can I bring you back to the point about writing to an audience as being as limiting as you made it out? I wonder if someone, I think I know, Hemingway.
Yeah.
I think probably Hemingway had a pretty good idea of who he was writing to. Mm-hmm. I think some Mailer's novels, Naked and Dead, I think he knew who he was writing to.
You think
Very
so?
good. He had some other novels. What was the one that was big? Ancient Evenings. I didn't think he knew, and then it showed. So I just wonder if writing to an audience is so as limiting as you suggest.
I don't think that Mailer. I wouldn't mind saying that Hemingway did that, but I would have a problem with Mailer doing that. But it's not that. It's that. Here's the example. My first novel, Putnam, Boat. My second novel, I went off and wrote the novel I wanted. Putnam liked the novel, but they felt I was dividing my audience. I was dividing my readers. My readers had known me on the first novel, which had a lot of spiritualism and obia and stuff like that. And they felt I had that audience, and my next novel should be like that. This is the problem. It's a nice problem, but it's a problem when you become a bestseller. If you become a bestseller and somebody gives you $3 million, you better write the novel they want. You better write the novel they want. And so when you watch, sometimes you watch bestsellers, they don't necessarily keep writing good novels. They keep writing novels that are the same because their salesperson is saying the audience is expecting this kind of novel from you, and you better write that because that's why we're giving you this money. You have a choice. You have a choice. You know, for me, of course, I'd love to be a bestseller. You know, I would love that. But it's a lot of work to be a writer. It's a lot of work to write a novel. It's a tremendous amount of discipline. I mean, you have to dedicate a certain amount of time every day. You have to, and it's time by yourself. You may spend 5 and 6 hours and come up with a paragraph, you know, that you tear up the next day. So, you know, I just feel that if you're going to do this, you might as well, I have to be interested in my own story. You know, I have to be interested. But, yeah, I can't see Mailer, but I definitely can see Hemingway. Hi there, Winston Huggins.
Hi, how are you?
Haven't seen him in about 15 years.
I'm not going to charge you for that introduction.
Okay. Miss Winston Huggins, not an H.
I don't know if it's relevant to you, but because the amount of novels that you've written, but how do you deal with writer's block? And you speak about every day doing like 4 hours. Do you do that like as you do a job, like you have a job? And how do you deal with writer's block?
Okay, 2 parts to it. I, knock on wood, do not have writer's block so far. I'm not sure what that means, writer's block. You don't know where you're going. You don't have enough story to move your story. When that happens to me, I read. I read. All around me, if you came to my desk, I'm just books. I kick them. They're on the side. They're on my table. They're where I have breakfast. I have just tons of books all around me, and they're books that are my favorite books that I love. And suppose I just go sit down and read. And 2 things it does. It gives me inspiration and gives me courage, because I know that another writer had to do that, had to go through it. So that, sometimes before I start to write for the morning, you know, you kind of have to know your day. So for me, my morning is precious. That's when my brain works. So sometimes before I start to write, I read. And you know, it's like gas in your car. You know, you get that kind of thing. Now, as to I don't think you wait for inspiration. The writing makes the writing. So you have to get into it in the right. Now, I've been writing for a long time, and I still have to tell myself this. I still have to work myself. It's not something you, like skating, you could do forever. You're remaking it each time. And I have to tell myself, Elizabeth, sit down here and keep on going. And the only difference now is I have the faith. I know that somewhere in that writing, I'm going to take off. I know the writing will lead me somewhere. But you can't give up and say, I'm going to do something else. There are all kinds of tricks that writers do. I like, you know, for me, I clean the house. Two things happen. The house gets clean. I mean, I start scrubbing bathrooms. I don't even know. In the end, I see, wow, my bathroom is clean. But, you know, I'm doing something physical. And my head is going like that. All kinds of tricks you have, sharpen your pencil, whatever. But you have to discipline yourself because you can't think about writing. You have to write. You have to do it. Just do it. I mean, there are people you run and meet and they say to you, if I ever had time, I would write a great novel. That is the biggest lie you will ever hear in your life. That is the biggest lie. You make time. You make time as a writer. You just plain make it. And it's tough. You could ask me a question. Were you asking me?
Yeah.
No. Go ahead.
It's tinted, right? To go with, I don't know if that works.
Well.
Because it's not necessarily American.
Well.
Just not seeing it through.
I think cream cheese and bagels is a little American. You know, you write a book and the reader, it's for the reader to decide. You know, I did my discovery, the reader, I mean, sometimes people read my book and they say something that I thought, wow, did I say that? I didn't even know I said that. But that's the whole point, you know. I think it's tainted. It's not totally American, but it's tainted in some way. I mean, do you see, I'm assuming have you read it?
No, I was just using her as an example.
Okay. But like in the beginning of the novel, when she looks at how her mother is interacting with the maid and with the gardener, it seems to her a little bit of class, you know, mother is having a little, pulling one on, a little superiority on them, right? But later on, in another scene, she sees a relationship that's going on with the mother and the helper that she doesn't even have with her mother. That a kind of intimacy that she can't even understand. There's a point at which Anna just is totally perplexed. She doesn't quite get it. I don't know, it's for you, it's for the reader to read and say, well, I think so, I don't think so. I mean, I'm there with Mary Sconde, I'm right. Yes.
How do you know when your story is done?
I know, good question. You know, it's just done. It's a crazy thing. You know, art is a crazy thing. I wish we knew. It's the thing we don't have control over. In this novel, I can tell you, I wanted it to come to the end when the mother has her surgery for her breast cancer, but it doesn't end there. And where it ends, I knew when I came to the end there was nothing more. That story was over. I have another story. One of my most challenging novels was Bruised Hibiscus. And I actually got an American book award for that. And because in that novel, I sent out a whole bunch of tentacles, relate things. And what the novelist has to do, the job of the novelist is to connect the dots, to tie it up. And I couldn't figure it out. And I was at the McDowell colony in New Hampshire, and there was a blizzard. I didn't know there was a blizzard. Anyhow, I'm walking down the hill, walking across the bridge, and the snow is just getting thicker and thicker, and I'm now a good way away from the colony, and it hits me, pow, I know how this novel is going to end. I know exactly how this novel. And I'd have pencil and paper, which is something a writer must always have. So I had to keep putting it in my head and running up the hill in this blizzard. It was, but it was just right. I knew it was just right. It was how the ends all tied up. And sometimes when the ends tied up, you start from the beginning because now you know. And I have to say this to you, that though I say that a writer writes with not knowing and knowing, when you do come to the end and you know, you have to start all the way from the beginning because you have to drop hints. You have to put strokes in your work. And that's the part of revision. Because a reader does not like to be hit with a 2x4 and say, this is how it ends. You may be hit by the 2x4 the way I was on the bridge, but then you start from the beginning and you start, it's like a painting. It's the same thing as a painting. A painting works because these motifs just struck all the way, through, and then you get the whole thing. So it's that. Yeah. I keep forgetting you. Let me get this lady's question.
Okay. I'm taking a creative writing class.
Mm-hmm.
Speak up.
I'm taking a creative writing class, and I have a lot to read, of course. But my question to you is, have you ever written in a way that nobody knows where you're from, if you're female? Because that's the way I have a dream of writing, that nobody will know that I'm Dominican, that I'm a female. Just
Sure.
How can you do that?
I think it was my 4th novel called Discretion. I wanted to write about adultery. Most women want to write about adultery, unfortunately. So I write about 50 pages, and I'm writing it from a first person, and I'm thinking to myself, this is the most boring novel I've ever, maybe you would find it interesting, but I was bored because I knew the story. I knew what I was going to write. I flipped it around. Now, it's hard to throw away 50 pages, but you have to do that. And I started that novel first person, an African ambassador, a man. So it's the man telling the story. And of course, it was a huge interest to me because I am finding out as a writer, you have to know so many parts, but you have to know the psychology of this guy who he loves his wife, and yet he has an affair. What causes that? Anyhow, most people, when they read that, they're sure that I'm a man. And then they look and they see Elizabeth Nunez, and they say, well, can't be you, because they're connecting the I with me. But also the interesting thing is, and I'm kind of name dropping here, but I'll name drop. Woodward, and what's the other guy's name? Bernstein. I was at, this time at the Yaddo colony, and he and I shared a bathroom. I had my room, and his room was there. And he read this book, and he comes to me, and he says, you told my story. You said everything that happened to me. You told my story. I didn't tell you a story. This is about an African guy, He says, he just followed me all over the place, saying, you just told my story. And I've also read from that book in East Hampton, where there were wasps all in the room. And the men all said, that I was telling their story. So I think this is the power, really, of the imagination. But, you see, it was still my story, in that I was interested in that topic of adultery. And sometimes when people say you're writing, I think you have to write about something that you're passionate about. You know, at that time I was going through a divorce and it was on my mind. But you have to turn the fact into fiction, into an imaginative work. And it's just finding that, are you going to do a first person, second person, third person novel? Are you going to do present tense, past tense? And sometimes you want to read a work that is like that. So I like the challenge of a present tense novel. It's kind of immediate. You know J.M. Coetzee, who won the Nobel Prize about 3 years ago. His book isn't a movie now, Disgrace. I think he is the finest writer. Coetzee. All his novels are present tense novels. And you know, so you read writers not just for the story, but you're reading for the craft. What happens in a present? There are certain challenges there, and then he does first person. You know, so that's what I mean.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
I just wanted to know, do you ever assign your work to your students?
Sometimes. I have to say that I think mostly about what it is my students, what is it I want my students to do. For example, I'm going to be teaching a creative writing class in the spring, and I kind of know what books I'm going to use. I'm going to use Coetzee's book, Disgrace, because I want the students to learn that, to see that first person and the challenges involved. And it's a third person. I want them to see that present tense. And what happens with that present tense is you're limited with the time scope of your novel. So you don't have that much time in the novel. And then I'm going to use one of my novels, Prospero's Daughter, because I want them to see how you can use a classical work and create a contemporary work out of a classical work. And also because in that novel I do one third person and two first persons. And then I'm going to use Olive Kitteridge. It just won the Pulitzer. And the reason I'm going to, not that I think that's such a great novel, but what is incredible about that is each chapter could exist on its own. There are actually a bunch of short stories, and this woman, Olive, connects them completely. And so you can read it as a novel, but you can pull one out. So, I mean, that's how I choose the books, based on what it is I want them to see and to learn and to, you know. But I don't know, spring hasn't come yet. That's what I'm thinking.
Would you like to talk a little bit about the notion of purity or essence and hybridity? And I'm thinking here of the Bagel and Bach. Mm-hmm. When I think of the Caribbean, I think of an intensely hybrid place, mm-hmm. which also has embraced that hybridity. Whereas the United States, you have a lot of diversity, perhaps even hybridity, but we're working very hard to perhaps cover how we perhaps are even a little bit ashamed about it, but we're trying to project a unity to the world.
Well, it's on our coin. E pluribus unum.
Right.
It's on our coin. It's the ideal.
What happens when you travel, when you straddle these two spaces?
I'm kind of not sure of your question. That I got the part about you're saying about the U.S. So what are you saying about the Caribbean? That you?
The Caribbean. What I thought you use this marker Bach.
Yeah.
But use it as a sort of a class, mm-hmm. to indicate class. But it also indicates a certain diversity that is going on in the Caribbean that has our kind of historic.
Yeah. It's just the music these people like.
But the Bagel, you characterized it as an American thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it was working for her that way. When I first heard this notion of multiculturalism that became in vogue in the States, I kept thinking, hey, that's what we've been doing for years. That's our society. Nobody's called it multiculturalism. But that's it. You know, I have a part in this novel where Anna quotes T.S. Eliot, "When I am pinned, wriggling on the wall, how can I spit out the butt ends of my days and ways? How can I presume?" From the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. And sometimes I feel like that you have to be defined in America. You have to, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but you have to, you're put in a box. And everything about, once you're put in that box, you know, you look at me, I'm a black woman, okay. If I say to you, I love opera, I become exceptional. I don't think that's exceptional. Because what's happening is I'm a human being first. I grew up listening to that music, for God's sakes. I grew up listening, you know, I went to see The Student Prince a zillion times. I love Caruso. I love, you know, it was a natural for me when I came to the US to find out, boy, you could stand up behind the lines of the Met and pay $2 or something and see a great opera. I'm not thinking anything other than, now, why should you presume, because you look at me and say, oh, that's exceptional? Because this same person is going to like steel band and reggae and jump up. This very same person, and have no problems, you know. So it's the one thing about that scares me about living here, and it causes me not to interact as much as I want to interact, because I feel that every time I'm looked at, I'm defined in a certain way based on my skin. You know.
Elizabeth, can I ask you a slightly different question? You know, sometimes you learn from subsequent works that succeed from failures you had before.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything in your writing career that was an opportunity to learn that something that didn't work or didn't work well, that on the rest of the journey you learned from and did differently?
Absolutely. From every book you learn something about the next book. It's really great. I learn you don't have to have a lot of words to describe a scene. That if you find the right words, you can do it right. I learned that the how is as important as the what. Do you know that ad for Lockheed Martin? There's a great ad for Lockheed Martin that I keep always watching. They're just great, whoever made up that. They say ta-da-da-da-da-da, and between the this and the that, there's a little word, and always that little word is how. Look at it sometimes, you'll see it. They do variations on it, and between the invention and the this and the that, they'll say it's how. So what I learned is that you have to have a real good marriage between your subject and your form. And I learned that as a literary, you know, in my getting my degrees for English. But as a writer, yeah, you do. So now, I don't know how you get that. I could never tell you how you get that. But you just get, you know when it's right and you know when it's wrong. The language in Anna is very different from my language in, say, Bruised Hibiscus. The language in Bruised Hibiscus is very lush. It's very, it just goes on. It's kind of like that. The language in Anna is real, you know, hopefully you could hear it, short sentences, precise words. It's very different. In the book I'm doing now, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like in the 3rd chapter, and, you know, I don't know. I mean, I know the subject matter, but it's the how. It's the how is always the thing.
I'm just sitting here amazed that you wrote a novel as a first-person man.
Yeah. I know.
I'm just amazed.
They don't know.
You know. I mean, when you hear someone playing the piano, you know if it's a man or a woman. If you hear somebody, and I know there's a history of women writing with male names so that they would put you published and so forth, and it was a good read. so that was enough to make it salable. But I'm just amazed that...
Yeah, it's a different thing. It's a different story. Like if you have a male character, and of course as a writer, you have to know how that male character is thinking and get the motivation and so on. But it's very different when the first person novel, the I in the novel is the man. And you are tracing that man all the way from page 1 to the end. People just think it's a big, you know, I mean, I have colleagues that work with me, the men like it, the men like discretion, and they would doubt me, you know, and it feels, you know, it feels like a little victory. It feels as a victory because, you know, when you are the oppressed group, you kind of know a little bit more. You have to know how to negotiate with whoever is oppressing you, or else you will die. You will be wiped out. So you have to know how, you have to know. It's like Sam Greeley's book, The Spook That Sat at the Door, right? Sam Greeley's book. So you have to know that guy, or that person. So a woman has to know a man, or they're gone. You know, you have to know your man. You're finished. Boy, I certainly saw my mother do this. She had 10 PhDs in that. She knew that man she was married to like a Stradivarius, I could tell you that. So she could write it, you know. Same way. It's amazing to me how African Americans have survived and prospered in this country in a very short space of time. Because if you think of it, 60 years ago, you couldn't drink from that faucet, and you couldn't drink from this faucet, or you had to sit in the back of the bus. It's a very short space of time. It's in people's memories. So how are you able to negotiate your way? Where today, if you talk about the most powerful people in America, most of them are black. Oprah Winfrey's taken over the TV. Tiger Woods has taken over golf. Beyonce is taking over, and we're not even talking about the president. So that is just amazing. It is just, and the only reason it happened is that that the oppressed group always knows how to negotiate. So that's my answer for that novel, and I didn't know it until I did it. I didn't know it until I did it.
Let's give Professor Nunez a round of applause.
Now you'll have to get my book.
One of the things, Elizabeth, we do at the lectures is not only have food for the mind, but we have food for the body.
Oh,
so
wow.
We have a reception afterwards. But before we get to the reception, there are two things I'd like to do. One of which has become a tradition of our lecture series, Elizabeth, and we give to the lecturer, the speaker,
thank you.
Something to take away as a memento.
Wow. Thank you.
For
Lovely.
you to frame in whatever place. And hang it in a place of pride and remember your visit with us.
Beautiful colors. Thank you so much. Thank you.